actually the 30th of May, so everyone had the day off yesterday and Memorial Day. One of the things that was talked about a lot in the news was how most people don't know a veteran. We've gone from a population that got drafted in World War II and Vietnam to, the all volunteer force, but that volunteer force has a very small number of people that are walking around. And what we like to do here on this show is just provide you some insights to being a veteran in transition, whether that be in the transition process or out. I have Dean here today. He's going to tell us about himself and his company. And this should be pretty interesting. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder. So we'll roll right into the frontline five, which are the questions that we always ask for those of you guys that are not familiar. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Dean and give us a quick intro about yourself and how you ended up doing what you're doing right now. Thanks.
Well, Rob, I'm honored to be a guest, and why don't I start sharing a little bit about me personally? So I tell everybody I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur, and my priorities in life align with God, family, and country. And family is very important to me. So my wife Kelly and I, we've been married 28 years. We've got four amazing kids. So we have two daughters, 25 and 22. We have a 19-year-old son. We have a 13-year-old son we adopted from Ethiopia. So family is busy and very important to me. And from a country standpoint, Rob, so like you're a class of 97. I am class of 93. And I, after graduating, chose aviation as my branch. So went to flight school, learned how to fly helicopters, then had a unique opportunity after flight school, went to Ranger School. So longer story there on what I learned from Ranger School and how that is great training for being a startup. But I served 7 years active duty, got out in 2000, and that ultimately led me down a path of big business and ultimately from there down to the whole entrepreneurial path. But that's different stories. So
Well,
let
that's a
me
good
pause there
introduction. And
after
it's
that
funny that you
introduction.
say that you went to Ranger School as an aviator because I worked at the schoolhouse twice. And one
Oh,
of
wow.
and one of the things that
Oh,
we
wow.
gleaned from those situations was, believe it or not, aviators do a lot better in Ranger School than the average person. And the reason why that is very, very simple. The Ranger Handbook is a checklist. So if I hand a checklist to a pilot who lives or dies by checklists, they usually tend to do pretty well. So I think that's an interesting part of your story because again, like that's a difficult thing to do because just based off of the opportunity for concussion injury, you could really take yourself out of your career path, if you got injured while you're in the course. And I know that's one of the fears of sending, anyone in aviation, whether that be Air Force, Navy, or Army, to the schoolhouse for that type of experience because you could get injured and potentially curtail your career or have to switch into something else. But sounds like you had a pretty good experience in Ranger School. And so you said you did 7 years and then transitioned into the business space. So what was that like, and kind of what was the auspices of you separating from service?
But Rob, I should clarify, it wasn't a positive experience. It was absolutely miserable at Ranger School, but that's part of why I look back at it with such fond memories because it was so awful, so terrible that it is one of those experiences that you look back and have fond memories for life. And I didn't know it back then, but Ranger School was great training for leading a startup because it was no sleep and incredible stress. And that's the life I've been living now for the last 5 years leading a
Yeah.
startup. But back to 2000, so that was the year I transitioned. And I mentioned that I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur, but when I left the Army in 2000, couldn't even spell entrepreneur. I had no idea this world existed. And what I've realized, Rob, is so often we're a product of our environment. And I had an amazing dad growing up. He was a 30-year engineer for Alcoa, a massive Fortune 500 aluminum company. And most of his friends, most of our neighbors worked for big companies. So when I left the Army in 2000, what did I think I was going to do? Work for a big company. I mean, that's the only world I knew, and that's exactly what I did. Worked for Procter and Gamble and Mars, and worked on brands like Crest and Tide and M&Ms, and they're both just world-class marketing and branding companies. So they're so incredibly thankful for that experience. But Rob, one thing that drives me is this insatiable desire to know that I'm making a difference. And what I've realized at working at Procter and Gamble, which is an $80 billion company, 80 billion, even though I had fairly big jobs and was very well paid, if you pulled me out, the next guy steps right up and the machine keeps going and it doesn't skip a beat. And I really wrestled with if that is an opportunity for me to truly make a difference, if I'm not replaceable. And that was the initial catalyst for becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know a lot of people kind of get that bug of coming out. So it's not just you of like, oh, I want you to go work for the large corporations. I think it's attractive to a lot of people that are separating from the military, particularly senior folks, because they see that, hey, here's my opportunity to actually get paid what I'm worth. And I hate to say it, but I know a lot of people kind of feel that way. I want to get paid what I'm worth when I separate from the military because, I've worked hard to get to where I am and I need to be compensated for it because I wasn't compensated for my skill set when I was in the service. And there's some truth to that, but it's also, you miss out, and like you said, the key critical factor is, do you have a purpose? Is your work bringing you joy? And it's sad to say that, but when you're operating in an area that you're called to, for lack of a better term, I think you tend to do better as an adult or as a person in general if you're somewhere where you're comfortable with the work, but you also feel that you're accomplishing a mission, whether it be, the mission of your organization or a higher mission that you're called to do, through your religious sense or whatnot. And so I think that's one of the difficulty for veterans is because those of us that hung on to the uniform for a long time, spent the better part of our youth serving the U.S. government with a significantly higher purpose of protecting the freedoms and the rights that everyone has. And when you lose that overnight with retirement or separation, it's kind of a shock to the system. And then walking into a company that's very bottom line driven is a difficult struggle for just about anyone. So I think that's fair to kind of reassess your first 3 years. And one of the things that we see all the time, and you hear about it, and it's one of the most dreadful statistics that you always hear when it talks about veteran transition is most folks don't end up in that job after that third year that they started out in. And that's just because the environment's different, and sometimes your hiring manager is just trying to fill the position as best as they can. They're not trying to build a position that's uniquely tailored to satisfy your desire to have purpose in the workplace. And it seems like, well, that's a bit much, but the reality of it is if you don't find purpose in what you're doing as a veteran, you're probably not going to enjoy your job.
Rob, hit the proverbial
Rob,
nail on the
you
head because
hit the
that is what
proverbial nail
drives
on the
me. What
head
drives
because
me
that
is
is
that
what
higher
drives
sense of
you. It
purpose.
drives me. It's that
And
higher
that's what
sense
we
of
loved
purpose.
when we wore the uniform.
And that's what we
And that's
loved
what
when
I
we wore the
struggled with was
uniform.
that higher sense
And
of
that's what I
purpose working for
struggled
these
with was
bigger
that higher
Fortune
sense of
500
purpose working
companies.
for these bigger Fortune
And
500
back to not
companies.
being able to spell
And back to not being
entrepreneur,
able
I
to
didn't think I had it
spell
in me to start a business from
entrepreneur, I didn't
scratch.
think I had it in me to
So I
start a business
started
from
the
scratch.
enter the entrepreneurial
So
ranks
I
through
started
acquisition.
the enter the entrepreneurial ranks through
And in
acquisition.
2012, bought my first
And in
business, and
2012,
it's a
bought my
business
first
that most
business,
people would never
and
heard of,
it's a
but it's
business
one if
that
you've
most
worn the
people would never
uniform
heard
before,
of,
you
but
would
it's
know
one if you've
because
worn the uniform
I bought a
before, you
government
would know
contractor that
because
produced dress
I bought a
uniforms for the
government
military.
contractor that
So,
produced dress
Rob, you
uniforms for the
remember the old
military.
ASU trousers with the
So,
gold
Rob, you
braid?
remember the Yep,
Yep,
old
sure
ASU
do.
trousers with the gold braid?
Yep,
Wow.
that was one of our contracts.
Oh, wow. Yep, that was
We
one of our
had thousands
contracts.
of uniforms every week
So we
for
had
Army,
thousands of
Navy, Air
uniforms
Force, and
every week
Marines,
for
and
Army, Navy, Air
I
Force, and
loved that,
Marines.
and I
And
learned the tragic
I
history of the
love
apparel
that. And I
industry
learned the
because when I
tragic history of
graduated
the
in
apparel
93,
industry
just a few
because
years
when I
before you,
graduated in 93, just a
over
few years before
50% of the
you,
apparel was made in the
over
US.
50%
Today
of the
it's
apparel was made in the
3.5.
US. Wow. Today it's
3%
3.5.
is all that's made here.
3% is all that's made
And my
here.
initial thinking being naive,
In
I
my
thought I want
initial
to win more
thinking, being
contracts
naive, I thought I want to win more
because then I
contracts
thought we'll create more jobs. But what I
because then I thought we'll
realized
create more jobs.
after
But
I
what I
fully
realized
understood the government
after I
contracting
fully
industry
understood the government
is that as
contracting
a government
industry
contractor, you don't
is
actually
that
create
as a
jobs, it's a
government
bidding
contractor,
process.
you don't actually Yeah, create jobs, it's a that's bidding fair.
So,
process.
Rob, if you and I are bidding on a
So,
contract and you
Rob,
had
if
it
you
before
and
and
I
I
are
won
bidding
it,
on a contract and you
in
had it
essence,
before
your
and I
jobs
won,
transfer to me and there's no
in
real job
essence, your
creation.
jobs transfer to me and there's no real job
That for
creation.
me And that for me was that light bulb moment that said, what if instead of being a government contractor, what if we built a brand? And I thought back to the days of Crest and Tide and M&Ms, and I also thought, what if instead of what 97% of brands do and chase cheap labor overseas, what if we made the intentional choice to produce
Yeah.
right here in the US? And that's where it started 5 years ago from a blank sheet of paper with this vision to build this iconic American brand that's truly American made. And I got to tell you, Rob, I'm exhausted. It has been by far the most challenging thing I've ever
Yeah,
done.
well, I mean, offshoring of all kinds of resources is something that we've seen in a lot of different industries, but the apparel industry for sure, just because, the amount of quantity and volume that I can get at a cheap price. And sadly, you know, quality versus profit margin are difficult things to balance. So as an entrepreneur, that's one of the most difficult things is like, hey, how do I keep the lights on my business and not lose jobs, but also create those opportunities that I would like to create for myself and other people, but also don't lose the integrity of what my business looks like. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are willing to compromise for the dollars and cents, and you can talk about just the ethical impacts of offshoring because I can guarantee you that the labor laws in other parts of the world are nowhere near as stringent as they are in the United States. And, you know, that comes at a cost. So if you look up some made in the USA jeans, those jeans are probably going to be 20 to 30% more expensive than the ones that you can find in your big box store. However, if you find that American made brand, the upside to it is that it's made in America, and if you can authenticate that, and there's like tons of websites that can do that, and I'm not going to dive into those because they tend to be a little bit political, but there's organizations that will tell you, if something's made in the USA and the background. Basically, they do the due diligence for you, so when you're purchasing from a company, that they can provide you with made in America, top quality, manufacturing or whatnot, and ensure that it's coming from the right place. But we'll transition really quickly into what are you doing now? So it sounds like you did the big firm, you did the government contracting bit, and now you've started your own business. So how is that going for you? Tell us about the business and what was the hardest part of kind of getting that thing off the ground.
So Authentically American is our brand, and it is full time, and it has been an incredible journey, and it's been challenging because COVID, for example, wasn't part of the business plan. And Rob, you and I got connected ultimately from my being at the Global South Conference. And I'm curious, prior to us getting connected, have you ever heard of Authentically American?
I've heard some chatter about Authentically American, but not, to the point where, I'm familiar with your company, like everything that you do.
Sure. Well, that's why I'm thankful we had the opportunity to get introduced because we've got amazing product, and again, it's all made here in the U.S. And I know this is primarily audio, but I want to go
Okay.
ahead and show you something, Rob, that is one of our hero products because we have polos like I'm wearing, we have t-shirts, we have socks, quarter zips, hoodies, anything apparel related. So think of Authentically American like a Nike polo type brand, but all made here in the U.S. But I'm going to hold up one of my favorite t-shirts. I'm sure it's one that would be a favorite of yours
Yes.
as well. Can you see it, Rob? Yep. So it is an athletic grade
Yeah, looks
t-shirt
pretty
with
legit.
printed on it, Go Army. So we have collegiate licenses for Army, Navy, Air Force, VMI, Citadel, all the military schools. And the feedback I'm told, Rob, is our t-shirts are incredibly soft, the softest t-shirt you've ever worn. And that's by design because who doesn't love a nice soft t-shirt? The other part is the print. Think a lot of the t-shirts in your closet that have that heavy
Yeah.
plastisol ink, and on a hot summer day, it will stick to your chest.
Yep.
You wash it a few times, it will crack. We are very intentionally use a soft hand print because we want the fabric, the print to include tagless, to be incredibly soft. But let me show you this innovation, Rob, this new product innovation. It's our sweat activated. So watch what happens when I spray this.
Yes, those are awesome.
you can see Beat Navy
Yeah.
magically you can see Beat Navy magically appears. And I love to showcase this because I've literally had people say, Dean, no offense, I don't care where it's made. The shirt is so incredibly soft and comfortable, and that technology is incredible. How in the world did you ever get that to work? And we have sold, Rob, 10,000 of these,
Wow.
10,000 West Point grads have purchased one, which initially I was excited because I thought that's incredible because what a milestone to hit 10,000. But then I realized with over 50,000 living graduates, 80% are unaware, have never purchased from us. So it's just a huge, huge opportunity for us and an opportunity for us to focus. So I love that you and I are talking because this is all about the veteran community. And what we found is our brand really resonates with veteran owned and veteran operated businesses and veteran focused charities. So we've got hundreds of veteran owned businesses. I know the Combat Diver Foundation. I found out what a great organization you are. And that's where we found our sweet spot. So we worked with some big recognizable ones like Wounded Warrior, Tunnel to Towers, Team Red, White, and Blue. But we also work with a lot of smaller businesses and smaller charities because a lot of them can't order thousands like the bigger ones do, but we keep our minimums low. So that opens the door to a lot of small businesses and small charities.
That's great. And I think, and there's one of the things that one of the challenges is the veteran T-shirt market is flooded with so many different types of shirts and you name it, they've got it. And so it's like trying to find with precision. And a lot of the times, like we've run out, is you realize that a lot of people are running out of, particularly during the pandemic, we're not able to support their mission of orders based off of the limited supply chain, and it's unfortunate because of that. And again, adding anything in the U.S. makes it that much more difficult, not because of anything other than the fact that like those resources may not be readily available today, you know. But by building out your business and maintaining something viable, you can create and maintain that supply chain, which is a huge opportunity for your business, but it's also a huge opportunity for your clients and your audience. So I think one of the things that we can do, again, like, and we'll put all your information in the podcast description as well, so you can find the website, so you can purchase some of the gear if you choose to. Hey, the Beat Navy shirts are always awesome because, again, that's something that all West Point graduates do: eat, sleep, and beat Navy all the time, and it's definitely something to check out. And again, like, I like comfortable t-shirts, and I think a comfortable, well-made t-shirt is probably just as good as a business suit for me personally, because I'm not the I'm not the guy who
Uh-huh.
dresses up that often anymore, and that's intentional. But I appreciate a high quality t-shirt, and making sure that you have a high quality outfit is always good. And the wet reaction shirts are even better because, again, like if you're repping your favorite team somewhere and your competitors may be within earshot or eyeshot of what you're doing, then you can always have the Beat Navy on there as well. So I think it's very important to provide that kind of a service, and again, because it's made in America, it makes it that much better. So
Let me highlight a couple things, Rob, because
let me
one,
highlight a couple things, Rob, because
you started touching on the market being flooded, which it very much is. I mean, there are countless, military veteran focused brands out there, and we don't strive to play in that market. We sell a ton of individual consumer shirts like the Go Army Beat Navy Sweat Activated t-shirt, but our focus is really on the corporate B2B side. And for example, if you said, Dean, that shirt is incredible, can I do something custom? And the answer is 100% yes. Whatever you want printed, whatever you want magically to appear, we can do. A lot of people say, well, Dean, what's the minimum? And the minimum we keep intentionally low to help support small businesses and small charities, and the minimum is only 24. But to give you an idea how we can scale, as we're starting to work with larger and larger companies, we just recently had a top 10 accounting firm order 27,000.
wow.
So 27,000. So we've got the small end covered all the way up to the large end scale. And Rob, here's the next question that I get often is, Dean, you've got amazing product. I love that it's American made, but how are you competitively priced? You've got polos, you've got t-shirts, socks, hoodies. How are you able to maintain competitive price? And that ultimately is a business model choice. Rob, you remember the old Dell business model of go direct? That's what we've had to do. We've had to cut out the middleman. So if a charity, a business, whether you're Fortune 500, middle market, small, large, it doesn't matter. Most often you work with a third party distributor, and that does not work because we can't be competitively priced. So that's why all these businesses now that we're starting to work with, all the charities, they don't go through a third party. They work directly with Authentically American and my team. And that's how we can have amazing product, have it all American made, and still be competitively priced.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that's always a big deal when you're looking at purchase orders or trying to collect or build, t-shirts, and one of the things is it's like, oh well, I don't want to give them away as gifts because I have a limited supply and it's difficult to procure more, and again, when you're on a small budget for a small business, promotional stuff is very important, but it's also one of the probably the lowest tier priorities as far as marketing is concerned, because if it boils down to me being able to, keep the lights on or launch a marketing campaign, I'll probably decide, you know, which one is better or worse based off of that. But I really appreciate you providing us those insights. And again, like I'm tied to a whole bunch of organizations that would definitely love to have a partnership with you. So I'm going to make sure that I put all your information in the podcast description. And hey, look, transition is it, and veterans starting their own business is very important. That's one of the things that we all should be thinking about doing. And like we talked about before we got started, like if you haven't started your LLC, walk into your SBA office and talk to them. See if it makes sense for your business or for your folks to start your own LLC, because if you eventually are going to get out of the military. So the more help that you can get for free while you're in uniform through, legal advice or, through any other opportunities that you can. And of course, you always have the veteran network of business owners that'll be willing to help or give you a little bit of their time to help you get established. But the first step is making sure that you have a business so you actually can own your own business. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people overlook in their transition is like, hey, do I want to start my own business? And you see it more often now that people do, but it definitely wasn't in the forefront of my mind when I was, a young officer in the military. I could care less about, having an LLC or, you know, making sure I had a good CPA, or any of that stuff. It just wasn't a priority. But knowing full well that if I'm managing my own business and I have a decent CPA, guess what? That guy can also help me with my personal taxes while I'm in uniform so I can write more stuff off. And so, again, it's one of those things that it's very simple. And somebody told me when I started my business, hey, make sure you have a good lawyer, make sure you file, have somebody good to do your paperwork, and make sure you have a CPA. And all those things seem super, super easy until, you know, there's a worldwide pandemic and you can't get any of these people on the phone. You're doing it virtually, and you're like, oh gosh, like, is this going to work out? Is it not going to work out? So I think now that things are opening back up, you got to take advantage of it. And if you're an entrepreneur, I mean, take advantage of Made in the USA. There is a market for it. I think there's a huge market share. And I think if you're looking to build your brand, sounds like Authentically American might be your place to go if you're trying to get some marketing and promotional materials. But I will toss it out for you to give the last word. So if you have anything else that you want to plug, like your location, website, where we can find your stuff, again, we'll put it in the podcast description, but I want to give you the opportunity to kind of plug it yourself. And we'll wrap this thing up. But thanks again for coming on, Dean. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Rob. And one more thing I'll highlight is just, our pricing tiers. So back to our mutual interest in making a difference, we have two pricing tiers. So if you are a Pepsi or Comcast, or you're a for-profit business, you're paying full price. If you're a charity nonprofit and you're looking to go ahead and make a difference for others, we provide our products and services at cost. We don't make any money when we do that, but we feel great about the difference we're making, about coming beside an amazing organization. I know I just learned about Combat Diver Foundation, so that's incredible what you guys do. But there are 40,000 veteran-focused charities, and we work with hundreds of them. And that's why I was thankful for the opportunity to be here, because our mutual desire to make a difference and also spread the word on our brand was a great opportunity here today. And if you do want to learn more about our brand, whether you want to get one of these fun sweat activated t-shirts for yourself individually or a fun pair of our socks, or you own a business, you operate a charity, you want to get involved, the best place to go is our website, authenticallyamerican.us, authenticallyamerican.us, and that .us was an intentional choice given the equity of our brand. So again, Rob, thank you for hosting me. I'm honored to be a guest and look forward to keeping in touch.
Yes, I look forward to it too, and hopefully I will be seeing some folks rocking those Army Navy shirts that you got. All right, thanks a lot, Dean. Hey, this is Rob Robinson with Philosophy from the Frontline. This has been Dean Wegner from Authentically American. Thanks again for coming on the show, and we will see you guys on the high ground. Thanks. Thanks for listening to Philosophy from the Frontline with Rob Robinson. We will bring you more interesting veteran transition stories, veteran advocacy, and more information in veterans transition in general on a podcast platform near you. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.